Alright, we're doing this again. Again. Whatever. Okay. Let's do this. Let's try to make it a little bit quicker this time because that took too long last time. I'm here doing a review of The Falcon and the Winter Soldier. I'm doing the whole series all at once instead of doing it episode by episode because it's just quicker that way. Quicker and easier. As the name of the show suggests, it's about the Falcon, Sam Wilson, and the Winter Soldier, who's also known as Bucky, or Bucky Barnes. James Buchanan Barnes, who's also known as Bucky. He was Captain America's sidekick during World War II and then was almost killed and brought back as a assassin called the Winter Soldier, or with a metal arm, and he was in the movies he was given a version of the super soldier serum, so he's strong like Steve. Um this show takes place after the events of all the most recent Avengers movies. So it deals heavily on the issues of you know, what would happen to the world where, half the population of the earth, that's over 3.5 billion people, disappeared for 5 years. So there was obviously a rearranging of the way the world worked when that happened, and then when all of a sudden these people just came back in the exact same spots they disappeared from, how does the world come back from that? And it's dealing with the world coming back from that, and there's a lot of problems involved. Not to mention all the other problems we just have in our everyday world, like, issues of trauma from, heavy stress and violence and all sorts of shit that can make you go nuts, and, issues of race, which this show deals with a mixed result. Um, Sam and Bucky are both characters, they're both Avengers, who were blinked out of existence for the 5 years, so they've just recently come back. And now they're trying to re enter their lives, and they have to deal with, not only coming back to the issues that their lives already had, but also having to deal with the fact that they've been gone for 5 years and the world kind of moved on without them, and they're trying to catch up. Um, Episode 1 kind of jumps right into this. It deals with Sam uh, basically accepting the fact that he's not ready to become Captain America. At the end of the last Avengers movie, Steve Rogers gave him, now old Steve Rogers, gave him the shield and told him it was his. Sam said it didn't feel like his, and he seems to have gone with the fact that he's not ready to be Captain America. So he gives the shield to the Smithsonian, thinking he's just kind of retiring the mantle entirely because he's not willing to accept it. He doesn't think anyone but Steve should be it. Um, some people disagree with him, but he makes the decision. While he's dealing, and then he's also dealing with his own personal life things. Well, he's still doing jobs for the military. He pulls a job for the military where he has to stop a group of terrorists led by the terrorist George Batroc, who was from the second Captain America movie, from kidnapping a military consultant or something, just some military guy that they kidnapped, and they were about to pass over a border that the U.S. military wasn't allowed to go over. So Sam had to stop them just before that happened, and he manages to do it. He then goes back home and he's got to deal with issues of his family's business, which has been run by his sister who's been running it alone for the past 5 years while raising two kids on her own, and the business is kind of failing, and he's trying to help her, secure a bank loan that he can't get because the people at the bank said you didn't have an income for the past 5 years, and his sister smartly points out, it's like, yeah, he hasn't existed for the past 5 years. You think that banks would be a little bit more understanding about the fact that, half the population of the earth has been gone for 5 years, but I guess I guess one of the things that's true in life, how they say that the only guarantees in life are death and taxes. I would add to it that bankers are also dickheads. People who deal in finance are just dicks. That's also kind of a guarantee. Because finance is just a dickish profession. No one likes to give away money. Everybody likes to make money, but nobody likes to give it away. Um, so that happens. So that's Sam's side of things. While that's happening, Bucky's trying to make. Bucky's not so much dealing with the trauma of coming back after 5 years. That's not really a big deal for him because he was, essentially kept in a state of half suspended animation, half brainwashed assassin for fucking 70 to 80 years. So that's not really a big deal for 70 years about. So that's not really a big deal for him. What's a big deal for him is that, the fact that he spent a good 60 to 70 years as a brainwashed assassin for the very people he was trying to fight in World War II. And he has all the memories. He's having bad dreams about his time as a killer, and he's been pardoned for his crimes, and he's been deprogrammed from his Winter Soldier programming, so he can't be mind controlled anymore. But he's got part of his pardon for his crimes is that he has to attend court mandated therapy sessions, and one of the things his therapist has him doing is he's got a book where he's writing down the names of everyone he has any association to from his time as the Winter Soldier. This means people he helped obtain power through Hydra, or people that he victimized or wronged in some way. He's trying to do this. He's become friends with this old Asian man whose son was killed, and apparently Bucky was the guy who killed him back when he was still the Winter Soldier. He's trying to do the thing where this old guy, he doesn't quite know what happened to his son. He just knows his son is dead, but he doesn't know how. Nobody will tell him exactly what happened, and Bucky wants to tell him, but he can't bring himself to do it. So he's still very much haunted by his very long and complicated past. Sam and Bucky are both dealing with personal issues, and then on top of it, Sam's contact in the military, this guy named Joaquin Torres, who in the comic books is a character who himself later becomes the Falcon, and who Sam kind of gives his wings to near the end of the show, but we'll get to that. But Joaquin Torres tells Sam that there's a group called the Flag Smashers running around. Flag Smasher is a terrorist from the Marvel Comics who believes that nationalism is bad for the world, so he wants to stop it. But he goes about stopping it through very violent means, so instead of coming off like a revolutionary, he just comes off like a maniac. He usually operates with a group, but it's usually just one person calling himself the Flag Smasher. In this show, there's a group of people calling themselves the Flag Smashers, and they're people who didn't disappear for 5 years. They were groups of people who stayed behind and then sort of moved to other places to fill the gaps. Imagine if half the population of a country disappeared. There'd be a bunch of things that weren't getting done, jobs and all sorts of shit that now somebody needed to fill the gaps with. Now let's say you were in a country that didn't lose quite as many people, or you had skill sets that could match this new demand, so you might go to that place. Well, because those people were so desperate, they might forget the usual things like, the strict borders and nationalism, and they would be willing to welcome anyone in. It kind of unified the world because they all had the shared trauma of the fact that they just lost half of the other world, and now they had to deal with that. So you had a lot of almost restructuring of the globe and rewriting of borders, but now that all those people who were gone have now come back, everybody's just trying to return things as normal. There's a new UN-sponsored group called the GRC, which I believe stands for the Global Repatriation Committee or something like that, and they're in charge of not only making sure that the people who came back can relocate and resettle back into their lives, but people who they've now also been put in charge of handling people who are now no longer welcome in countries they were welcome into 5 years ago, and have now essentially become refugees in these countries that they were calling home. And now they're in these weird little camps where they're not being treated right, they're not being fed properly, they're not getting proper medical treatment, and some people are dying, and they're being treated very badly. That's what these flag smashers are. They're those people, and they want to put an end to borders. They want to be treated better. So they're running around doing these terrorist acts and basically, growing their numbers bit by bit. At the end of the first episode, after Sam gave away the shield to the Smithsonian, and the government said, you're doing the right thing, this is for the best, they then hand the shield over to a new guy, and there's a new Captain America. And Sam and Bucky both see this, and neither one responds very well. In the beginning of the next episode, we're introduced to the new Captain America. He's a guy named John Walker. John Walker is also from the comic books. He's a character who started out as a guy known as the Super Patriot, and then became Captain America, and then later became the character called the U.S. Agent. He's kind of like an off-brand Captain America, a much more nationalistic character. Not the least likable Captain America, but he's up there. I mean, there was a Captain America who straight up became a Nazi, so... anyways, John Walker is he's just a normal soldier, but he has a pretty good record. They said he was like a 3-time Medal of Honor winner. He's got a long service record, and he seemed incredibly physically fit. Just like on paper, he seems like the right guy to be Captain America. Seems like definitely a good guy to sell, and they're definitely doing a campaign to sell him to the American people. He has a partner named Lamar Hoskins, who goes by the name Battlestar. Apparently, they've known each other a long time, and so they've become partners in this whole thing. Bucky confronts Sam over giving away the shield. Sam doesn't like Bucky's confrontation with him, and then they both together go to try to find the Flag Smashers. They do find the Flag Smashers, and they find them with their leader, who they think at first is a hostage, but it turns out she's just very young, but she is the leader of the group. Her name is Karli Morgenthau, which is a variation of the name of the original Flag Smasher from the comic books, Karl Morgenthau. So there's that. Karli is abnormally strong, as are several other of the Flag Smashers. They're basically super soldiers, just like Bucky. And Sam and Bucky are kind of have a hard time with them. And then, while that's happening, John Walker, the new Captain America, and Lamar Hoskins, Battlestar, show up to help. And they all fight the Flag Smashers, and they all basically lose. None of them end up very well from that situation, and the Flag Smashers get away. Walker tries to play nice with Bucky and Sam. Neither one of them is really having it. Bucky seems especially angry, but Walker, to his credit, does try to play nice to get them to join him so they can all work together. They say no, though. While they're flying on their way back, Bucky seems to really be focused on that they should get the shield away from Walker. And Sam tells him that stealing the shield would not be a good idea, and he turns the subject to, like, how are there more super soldiers? Like, how is that possible? And Bucky has an idea of how it might be possible, so he takes Sam to Baltimore, where he introduces him to an old Isaiah Bradley. Isaiah Bradley was a character from a comic book called Truth, Red, White, and Black. And it's a story about how the government tried to recreate Captain America, and they tried to recreate versions of the super soldier formula, and they had like various different forms of it, and to figure out which one would work the best, they just experimented on a group of black soldiers without even telling them what they were doing to them. and it had various degrees of success, but the only one that was a real success was on Isaiah Bradley. He was a success like Steve Rogers was. But they had these group of super soldiers, some who were dying, some who weren't, and they used them in battle until things went bad. We'll get to Isaiah's story more later, but Sam and Bucky talked to him because I guess Bucky had a confrontation with Isaiah back in the 50s, and Isaiah won it. When he reveals that he's a super soldier to Sam, Sam is shocked, and then he gets, Isaiah says that Isaiah seems especially angry that Bucky got pardoned because, he's seeing a guy who spent decades as a terrorist getting pardoned by the government, when Isaiah says he was what they did to him for his service is they put him in jail for 30 years. So he throws the two of them out of his house. Sam is very angry that he didn't know about this, and Bucky told him that nobody knows about this, not even Steve. And while they're arguing in the streets, and while they were at Isaiah's house, they also meet Isaiah's grandson, Elijah Bradley, who's also a character from the comic books, who is another indication that on top of Wanda and Vision's sons, Billy and Tommy, it seems like they're definitely building to introducing the Young Avengers. Because all three of those characters are members of the Young Avengers. While Sam and Bucky are arguing, a group of cops show up and they ask Bucky, is this man bothering you? It's definitely a very racially based thing. Like, nobody called the police. The police just on their own just decide to show up and start harassing Sam until they realize who Sam is, and then they apologize and everything. And then they arrest Bucky because there's a warrant for his arrest because he missed his court-mandated therapy session. So while he's at the jail cell, him and Sam both get basically a free therapy session from Bucky's therapist, and they kind of come to the conclusion that they'll work together to get this situation. They're both angry at each other because Bucky's angry at Sam for giving away the shield, and Sam's angry at Bucky for getting angry at him about his personal decisions in the first place. And Sam basically just says, "Hey, listen, we'll just deal with this current problem that we have as partners, and then when it's over, we can just not have anything to do with each other." And they just agree to do that. Walker gets Bucky out of his mandated therapy sessions so he can help him with their current problems, and he tries to recruit Sam and Bucky again, but they keep giving him problems with it and still don't want to work with him. And that's when Walker stops being nice and basically just tells them, like, if you're not going to help me, then stay out of my way. Bucky and Sam are trying to figure out where exactly the super soldier formula came from. While this is happening, the Flag Smashers themselves are loading the supplies they stole onto a plane, and they get a text from somebody called the Power Broker. The Power Broker is a character from the comic books who the name suggests gives people superpowers. They steal technology or chemicals or various other things that can give people abilities, and then, basically sell superpowers to the highest bidder. In the show, this is a person who has recreated the super soldier formula, and the Flag Smashers stole their samples of it. And several members of the Flag Smashers have taken it. The Power Broker shows up, and while some of the Flag Smashers get away, one stays behind and gets killed so they can keep the Flag Smashers' men from coming after the rest. Not the Flag Smashers' men, the Power Broker's men from coming after the rest of the Flag Smashers. I'm sorry, I'm tired. That's what this is all about. Sam and Bucky decide that they have to go see Zemo because the super soldier formula must have something to do with Hydra. And the only person around who still has access to Hydra's information is Zemo. So in the next episode, Bucky goes to see Zemo. Zemo tries to use the code words to get Bucky under his control. Doesn't work anymore. He shows Zemo, "I'm not that guy anymore." Zemo's not completely convinced, but he goes, "Okay, and Bucky starts telling him about how there's a group called the Flag Smashers. They have super soldiers. That piques Zemo's interest. And he's trying to figure out if this has anything to do with Hydra. And Zemo convinces him that he needs to get out of jail if he wants to help them. So Bucky, as he's leaving the jail, sets up a few things to help Zemo escape. And he tells Sam about it after the fact. Sam is not happy, but Zemo's already out, so Sam agrees that he's like, fine, we'll do this, but as soon as it's over, he's going back to jail. Zemo, first we find out that Zemo is in fact a Baron. They didn't mention that in the movies, but he is in fact a Baron, like he is in the comic books, and he's also rich, like he is in the comic books. He then takes a private jet to a place called Madripoor. Madripoor is one of those made-up places in comic books. In Marvel, it's a place off of the coast of Japan where, you know, all sorts of criminal shit gets done. It's basically a pirate island in the modern world. Just a criminal's paradise. It's run by criminals. While there, Sam is pretending to be a criminal, Bucky is pretending to be the Winter Soldier still, and Zemo's just being Zemo. They go to meet Zemo's contact. The meeting goes bad. This contact dies, and a bounty gets put on all their heads. While they're running away, they run into Sharon Carter, who's hiding out on Madripoor because, unlike Sam and Bucky, who were pardoned for their crimes, Sharon is still considered a traitor to the United States and can't go home. So she's kind of angry about that. But she seems to be doing well in Madripoor. She's living in the high end of town. She seems to be running a very good business as a smuggler of stolen art. So she seems to be doing well. Sam asks for her help, and she agrees to give it if Sam, in exchange for a pardon that Sam's promises that he can help her get. I don't know how he can help her get a pardon because he can't even give himself a loan, but apparently he can somehow get somebody else a pardon. I don't know how it works. It's comic books, I guess. They basically chill at a party at Sharon's place. Zemo dances as something you might have seen online. That was fun. Sharon says she finds information on where the super soldier serum may be coming from. They find a secret lab at the Madripoor docks where they find a scientist who worked for Hydra, and then eventually the government, or wait, was it? Yeah, I think he worked for Hydra. Maybe, I don't know if he worked for Hydra. He worked for the government, but then he was blinked out of existence for 5 years. When he came back, they weren't working on the super soldier serum anymore. And then he got recruited by the power broker, and he said he came up with a new version of the super soldier formula that gives you the power of a super soldier, but without like the physical transformation, because you know how like Steve Rogers went from like a skinny, scrawny guy to all of a sudden a fucking jacked dude. It doesn't do that anymore. Physically, it doesn't really change your actual physical appearance in any way. It just makes you stronger, which is why all the Flag Smashers still look the same. He's telling Sam and Bucky this, and he tells them how Carly Morgenthau and her Flag Smashers stole all the samples he created. He says he created 20 samples. While this is happening, a bunch of bounty hunters come after the group at the docks, and while Sam, Bucky, and Zemo are talking to the doctor, Sharon is basically outside doing everything and just killing these guys left and right. Then Zemo kills the doctor to make sure he can't create any more super soldier serum. They get attacked. Somebody blows up the lab. Zemo puts on his mask and fights a little bit to show that kind of shit. But then they manage to get away. They find where Carly and her Flag Smashers, what city they're operating in, because Carly pulled off a terrorist attack in this town They robbed the GRC building, and then Carly blew it up, killing a bunch of people inside, which means she's gone full on murderous terrorist because she doesn't care, because she's just angry. They get to Sam, Bucky, and Zemo get to this town and hide out in a place that Zemo has. While they're there, Bucky realizes that the Dora Milaje have been tracking them. They're there for Zemo. At the beginning of the next episode, we see that the Dora Milaje, particularly this one, I think her name is Io, she was the one who helped deprogram him. So he has a personal relationship with this woman, on top of just what the Wakandans did for him in general. And she seems very upset with him that he broke Zemo out of jail, and he seems very ashamed by her anger because they have a personal relationship. But he just tells her, like, Zemo's just a means to an end. He just needs him to help him with this one problem. She's somewhat understanding and gives him 8 hours, and then she's coming for Zemo whether he likes it or not. He tells Sam and Zemo this. I don't know why he would tell Zemo this, but he does. And then they go to a place where they try to figure out where the refugees that are working with the Flag Smashers are, and they try to figure out where Carly is. Apparently a woman who was like a mother figure to a lot of the refugees has recently died because the refugees aren't being properly taken care of. And while Sam and Bucky just kind of wander around and have no luck getting information from anybody, Zemo figures out that none of the adults are going to trust them, so he offers candy to the children and gets one of them to tell him where the funeral's being held, because that's most likely where Carly and her people will be. He refuses to tell Sam and Bucky to give himself a little bit of leverage so they can't just hand him over. And then while they're on the way to the funeral, they run into Battlestar and Cap. It's obvious that at this point, Walker cannot handle the pressure of being Captain America. Like I said, he looked good on paper, but he is not fit for this role. He wants to be something he's not, and he is really not that, and he's not living up to even his own expectations, and it's fucking with his head. But they all decide to team up and go to the funeral. While they're there, Sam tries to confront Carly alone and talk to her and try to talk her down from what she's doing. She, makes her point about how she's being treated unfairly by the GRC and their allies, and Sam is understanding of her point of view, but he's like, but you're killing people. Like, you're committing terrorist attack, you're hurting people, you're killing people. That's not okay. He's like, what about the people you've hurt and killed? These are innocent people. She says, they're not innocent, and she's like, they're roadblocks on my path, and I'll go over them if I have to. I'll go through them if I have to. And Sam's just like, wow, that's a hell of a thing to say. And Carly's like, you tricked me. She's like, he didn't trick you. He just said something and you responded. That's called a Freudian slip at best, and all Freudian slip does is reveal what you're really thinking, and what you're really thinking is violent thoughts. This kind of goes along with Zemo's point that the reason there can't be super soldiers is because if you give someone too much power or an unnatural level of power, they will just automatically become who they really are. And people at their heart want to be better than everybody else. So if you give them too much power, people will just become a supremacist automatically. It's just inevitable. They kind of argue back like Steve did, and he goes, yeah, but there's only ever been one Steve Rogers. It's more likely that if you give someone too much power, they'll more than likely become a worse person, not a better one. Which kind of makes Zemo's an asshole, but he's kind of right. While Sam's talking to Carly, Walker forces the point that they should go help Sam. Walker shows up, fucks up the whole conversation. Carly freaks out and then runs. While she's running, Zemo, who was handcuffed to a fucking, I don't know what it was, something by Walker, and then just left behind. They just keep not paying enough attention to him. He's an evil fucking genius. They don't pay attention to him. Zemo runs off, and he also manages to get a gun, and he shoots Carly. Only wounds her, but he shoots her enough that she drops the super soldier formula because she was planning on making more people into super soldiers. She only made like 7 or 8, and so they had a few samples left over, and so she had it on her. She drops it, and Zemo starts smashing all the vials, but he gets hit in the face by Walker's shield before he can smash one last one. Walker finds it and keeps it, while Carly gets away with her people. Walker and Lamar try to take Zemo at this point. The Dora Milaje show up, also try to take Zemo. There's a confrontation between the Dora Milaje and Walker and Lamar. At first, Sam and Bucky aren't in the fight really, and Bucky really has no intention of getting involved, but Sam talks him into getting involved, which they should have just stayed out of it, because it just doesn't go well for anyone. The Dora Milaje make quick work of everybody. They even know how to disarm Bucky, literally. They know how to take off his arm with just like pressing a few things in the shoulder, which he didn't know that they could do that, and he's genuinely shocked and even looks a little hurt by it. But while they're all fighting, Zemo manages to get away. He, of course, had a secret tunnel to escape through. So they lose everything. So they all just end up looking stupid, and Walker especially feels just dumb and ineffective. He's definitely not feeling up to the mantle that he's taken on. He starts talking to Lamar about if he could take the super soldier formula, would he? And Lamar says, yeah. He's like, power just makes, like Lamar says, power just makes you more of yourself. It's kind of like what Zemo was saying, but not quite as such negative connotations. Carly calls Sam's sister, threatens her and her kids to get Sam's attention, which works. Sam meets with Carly. He's supposed to come alone, but he comes with Bucky. He is less than happy with her. They realize that Walker has now found the other flag smashers, or they found him, and it looks like he and Lamar are walking into a trap, so Sam and Bucky go to help. Carly tries to stop them, but can't, and well, like I said, Walker and Lamar walk into a trap. Lamar gets taken captive at one point, but he manages to get free. Bucky and Sam show up to help Walker, but apparently Walker doesn't really need it because he's taken the super soldier formula he stole. And so now, Sam looks at Walker with like a look of like, what the hell did you do? Basically what everyone watching the show is doing, because they realize Walker is not fit for this. They fight the flag smashers. Carly comes at Walker at one point, and as she's about to attack him, Lamar gets in the way, and Carly punches him so hard he goes flying across the room into a pillar, and he dies from the impact. That's when Walker truly loses it, and while the flag smashers are retreating, he chases one of them down and beats him to death with the shield in the street, like in front of numerous witnesses. So the whole world just saw, Captain America kill an unarmed man who had already been subdued. Not a good look. Really not a good look. Very reminiscent of some of the shit that goes on with cops nowadays, which I think was intentional, on top of all the racism debate. Next episode begins with Walker definitely having a mental breakdown over everything that just happened and trying to shake it off. Sam and Bucky confront him, and they fight over. They basically say he's got to come in and that he's got to give up the shield. He doesn't take that very well. They fight over the shield. Bucky and Sam manage to take it from him, and in a pretty fucking vicious fight where Walker almost kills Sam, even rips his fucking wings off of his suit, fucking basically busting it completely. And then Bucky gives the shield back to Sam, and then walks, he just kind of drops it in front of him, been like, here, you're supposed to be responsible for this. And then he just sort of walks off. Torres tells Sam that the military is basically taking over everything for now because with Captain America killing a foreign national in the streets, it's kind of become an international incident. And Sam just takes the shield and leaves, and he leaves the wings with Torres. Like I said, Torres becomes Falcon later on in the comic books, and Sam leaving Torres with the wings, he basically just says keep them. It suggests that Torres will in fact become a version of the Falcon in the MCU as well. Sam then goes to see Isaiah Bradley again to ask him about like what exactly happened. Why is he so bitter? Because he must have believed at some point, and Bradley tells him that yeah, he used to be like him until he saw the racism that black soldiers had to deal with. And then he basically tells Sam the whole story about how he and all the other black soldiers in his unit were experimented on without knowing what was happening to them by the government. The super soldier serum affected a number of them in various different ways, but it started killing a bunch of them, all the other ones except for him. Some of his guys got captured at one point, and he found out that the military brass was going to bomb the POW camp, so nobody would find out that they had super soldier serums, that they had a super soldier, that they had turned black soldiers into super soldiers. Isaiah broke out of his disobeyed orders, broke out of his base, and went and rescued his guys and brought them back. He goes, not that it mattered, they all ended up dying eventually anyways. But he, as his punishment for doing that, he was then court-martialed and put in jail, where he was then experimented on for 30 years. It's kind of it deals with the race issue again because it's a parallel. That's almost exactly what Steve Rogers did, and he got proclaimed a national hero for it. He got rewarded for his actions. Meanwhile, Isaiah was punished with what was supposed to be a lifetime in prison, but a nurse took pity on him, declared him dead, so he was able to get out, and now he's essentially been erased from history, and he claims he's happy with it that way. That way he gets to live at peace, because he figures if people knew about him, he'd probably end up dead. And he says to Sam, he's like, they would never let a black man be Captain America, and he's like, and no self-respecting black man would want to be. That hits Sam a little bit, so he's not sure what to do now. So he just decides to go back home and deal with his personal life a little bit. While that was happening, Bucky went to Sokovia to confront Zemo because he knew that's where Zemo would be. He does a thing where he puts a gun in Zemo's face and acts like he's going to shoot him, but then when he pulls the trigger, it just clicks, and he shows him that he has the bullets in his other hand, basically showing Zemo yet again that I'm not who you think I am. He's like, I'm not who you want me to be, so stop trying to manipulate me. He then turns him over to the Dora Milaje, who take him to the raft to be locked up permanently. Bucky then asks Io for one more favor. He then goes to New Orleans, where Sam is, where he's trying to help his sister fix up the family's boat so maybe they can get their business running again. And he shows up with a case from the Wakandans saying that it's a gift. They don't exactly say what's in the case right away. He then decides to help Sam fix up the boat and maybe help him with his own personal problems. They then show later on Sam and Bucky training with the Shield, and Bucky apologizes to Sam, saying that he didn't realize what he and Steve were, how it would affect a black man to be handed the mantle of Captain America, what exactly they were asking him to take on, and he apologizes for that. Sam then tells Bucky that if he really wants to get over his time as the Winter Soldier, he can't just meet the people he's victimized. He's got to actually be of service to them. He's got to try to do good for them and make things right. Try to make things as right as he can. Sam and Bucky then go their different ways, while Sam trains some more with the Shield, because it seems like he's definitely into the idea of taking on the mantle of Captain America now. Speaking of which, John Walker was punished for killing somebody, and he was stripped of the title of Captain America. He's stripped of his military rank and basically thrown out of the military. They said it's only because of his service record that he wasn't straight up court-martialed. But he basically gets fired from everything. While he's kind of like figuring out what to do next with his wife, a woman named Contessa Valentina Allegra de Fontaine shows up. She's a character from the comic book. She's kind of like the female Nick Fury. She and Nick Fury were partners, sometimes lovers. They've known each other a long time. She was like the big time female spy. It seems like she's going to have a similar role in the MCU. They definitely seem to be setting her up as sort of like a female anti-Nick Fury. She talks to Walker a little bit and basically convinces him that, he did the right thing killing that guy, and that, technically the government doesn't own the shield, and she knows he doesn't have it. She also knows that he's a super soldier now. She knows a lot. And she says, and when I call, you'll answer. So that leaves a little ominous thing. While Sam's training with the shield, he gets better and better at it till it seems like he's good. Then Carly, who is now, through the help of Sharon Carter, recruited Batroc to her side, is planning on attacking the GRC building in New York City. She recruited Batroc because she knows that when she does, Sam will show up, and she has Batroc there to fight Sam because he wants payback for being beaten earlier in this show. Next episode, it's just about the attack on the GRC building. So they attack the GRC building, and then you see Sam open up the case and just look at whatever's inside, and then that's the end of the episode. Although you do see there's an after credit scene where it shows Walker building his own shield in his garage for whatever that's going to be. Oh. The Flag Smashers are waging an attack on the GRC building. For some reason, Bucky is just able to walk through security at the building, even though security is completely on lockdown. He's just able to walk through. Like, I guess they all know who he is. Sharon also ends up there. They decide they gotta stop the Flag Smashers, but they know that this has to be something. This has to be something more than just a simple attack. There has to be something more complicated to it. So while Sam attacks the building from the top floor, Bucky is on the ground floor waiting to see what else is happening. Sam flies in, he confronts some of the Flag Smashers, gets attacked by Batroc, and fights him there. While that's happening, all the GRC people get ushered out of the building. One group of the GRC people get put on a helicopter, and two others get put in these big armored trucks that are then securely locked. They're then taken but the problem is a bunch of the Flag Smasher people are working as security in the building, and they manage to steal the helicopter and both trucks. Bucky goes after the trucks while Sam ends up going after the helicopter. While Bucky is going after the trucks, Carly decides that, they're not going to just take hostages anymore. They're going to kill all the people inside to stop the vote. And the other Flag Smashers don't seem too keen on this idea, that might be too far. But they go along with her regardless. She starts to set one of the trucks on fire so she can distract Bucky. He manages to he starts opening the truck to get everybody out. While that's happening, Walker shows up to confront Carly and her Flag Smashers, and he fights them pretty well, but he's outnumbered and starts getting beaten. After Bucky gets a bunch of the people out of one of the trucks, he stops the Flag Smashers from killing Walker, gets knocked off the edge of the street into this construction site down below, where he fights another one of the Flag Smashers. Walker tries to go after Morgenthau again, but she manages to get into the other truck and starts to drive it off the edge into the same construction site. Walker, realizing that, that maybe this is more important than getting revenge, jumps in, tries to stop the truck from going over the edge. The Flag Smashers attack him, and they all go over the edge. As the truck starts to go over the edge as well, Sam shows up and manages to use his wings to fucking stop it from falling in and saving the people inside. He also manages to save the helicopter as well. He got the guy who hijacked the helicopter and stopped the helicopter from crashing. So it looks like they're all about to have some big fight in this pit that is a construction site, but then Batroc fires some gas canisters at them, and the Flag Smashers manage to sneak off. They split up while they're running off, so Walker, Bucky, and Sam also split up, with Walker and Bucky going one way and Sam going another. Sam ends up following Carly, who runs into Sharon Carter, and that's where Sharon Carter reveals that the reason she's doing so well in Madripoor is because, surprise, surprise, she is the power broker, and she originally recruited Carly and her people because she wanted their help, and she offered to help them, but they betrayed her by stealing the super soldier serum. That's when Batroc shows back up, and the reason that Sharon hired him to work for the Flag Smashers because she wanted Batroc to spy on the Flag Smashers for her. And then Batroc tries to blackmail Sharon Carter by telling everyone that she's the power broker. Then Sharon Carter shoots Batroc, Carly shoots Sharon. Captain America, Sam Wilson, now jumps in and fights Carly a little bit until she gets the better of him and she's prepared to shoot him. And then Sharon Carter just shoots Carly because Carly's just gone full-on violent lunatic. While this is happening, Bucky and Walker just managed to trick the other Flag Smashers into walking into a trap where they're arrested. Then as those Flag Smashers are being led away, their van that they're loaded into gets blown up by Zemo's butler, and it shows that Zemo hears of the incident on a radio in prison, and he's just sort of happy about it. He gives a little look and smile at the camera, just knowing that he was behind that ultimately. So basically, all the super soldiers are now gone, all the Flag Smasher ones at least. Sam delivers Carly to a bunch of paramedics, but she dies regardless. He then talks to the GRC people about, like, you know, how they have to do better, and that, you know, they can't just, you know, they can't just brush these people off as terrorists. They had a good reason for doing what they're doing, and they should respect that. And he gives this big impassioned speech that everybody sees on TV, and he, you know, kind of cements his place as Captain America. They get way too chummy with John Walker at the end, even though it's still clear they don't like him, but they just seem too accepting of him despite the confrontation they had and what he did, but whatever. Then you see a culmination of a few things. Sam gets Isaiah Bradley a statue in the Captain America section of the National Museum, which Isaiah seems truly touched by, so that way he'll never be forgotten again. John Walker is now fully the U.S. agent and working for the Contessa. Sam and Bucky go to a cookout. Well, Bucky tells the old man from the beginning about how he killed his son and about how he didn't have a choice in the matter, and it reveals that he gives his book to a psychiatrist and he's crossed off all the names, meaning he's made amends with them. And then he attends a cookout with Sam, showing that he's better, I guess, that they're both better, because Sam's accepted his role as Captain America and Bucky has kind of put his role as the Winter Soldier behind him finally. And then there's a scene where it shows that Sharon Carter is indeed being pardoned, but she still intends to be the power broker. She's just going to now use her position in the United States government, because she's going back to being a spy again, to steal secrets and technology that she can use to sell on the black market like she would have the super soldier formula. It was definitely an interesting ending, especially for her story. this show, it was interesting to see the culmination of all these events and the progression of all these characters. The funny thing is that even though Sam is supposed to be the central character because he's the one becoming the new Captain America, his story seemed the least interesting out of everybody's. Bucky definitely had a more interesting story than her. Even Walker's story seems slightly more interesting. Sharon's, for certainly, is more interesting. But Sam seemed kind of lackluster because it was wrapped around the whole story of racial issues. Not that that isn't a bad subject matter. Not that it's a bad subject matter to tackle, but it's like I don't know if Marvel is definitely the right people to be tackling it because they're not going to have real proper solutions. They're not going to really willing to be saying challenging things that much. I mean, Sam's whole speech is just about how, accepting that, all these issues with people disappearing and then coming back, it's like we have a shared crisis now. And instead of just trying to screw over a group of people to make things better for everybody else, which is the standard for how we do things in the world, like maybe we should try to take it on as one people. Try to actually help each other instead of fucking some people over for the benefit of others. But even he doesn't have the answer for everything because it's like one of the GRC people says, he's like, well, it's like, do you think the government of these countries should have to take in these refugees? And he goes, yeah. He goes, okay, well then what about all the people who came back and now find other people living in their homes? Are they just supposed to go homeless? And Sam doesn't have an answer for that because it's a complicated question, which is why I'm not sure Marvel was the right people to be bringing up these questions in the first place because, like I said, they're not going to be very challenging. They're not going to be willing to be bold enough to say, hey, maybe this is what should be done. And that's why they're dealing with the issue of race. It comes off kind of like, because it's like they're acknowledging it, but they don't really know what to do about it. So, but yeah. I think the person who really benefited the most from the show was Zemo, because he was a really lackluster villain in Civil War, but in this show, he was actually very interesting. He came off like you understood his point of view. He came off rather likable and just like a very unique, interesting guy. So I think he came out the best from it, and I hope they bring up his character. I'm glad his character survived. I hope he comes back more. But yeah, all in all, despite its problems, I'd give this show 2 thumbs up. I'd highly recommend it. It's a good show. They've already announced that there's going to be another Captain America movie starring Sam Wilson as Captain America, so that should be cool. But yeah. Yeah, that's it. That's the end of it. So, yeah, good show. All right, have a good one.